The irony of the situation was almost unbearable. My company was worth $3.8 billion, but to my own family, I was still the 35-year-old disappointment. And it was at that moment, on a Tuesday around 10 in the morning, that the phone call came that would change everything. I was sitting in my 50th floor corner office in Chicago, immersed in the quarterly projections for Morgan Empire Holdings. My assistant, Sarah, broke the silence over the intercom. Miss Morgan, Jennifer from Elegant Visions is on the line. It's a wedding agency. I almost told her to just take a message. But then I remembered. Chloe. My younger sister, Chloe, was marrying her boyfriend Michael right here in Chicago next month. 6 months ago, I'd overheard that they were having serious financial difficulties with the planning. Without a second thought, I had quietly transferred $40,000 to Elegant Visions. It was an anonymous contribution to save Chloe the stress and give her the celebration she deserved. My family, under no circumstances could they know it was me. I pressed the button. This is Melissa Morgan. Ms. Morgan, this is Jennifer. I'm calling about the Morgan Anderson wedding. I immediately caught the undisguised tension in her tone. She spoke as if she was afraid our conversation was being recorded. I have some extremely unpleasant news. It concerns your guest status. My Mont-Blanc pen froze over the report. I'm listening, Jennifer. Your family contacted us last night, she began, stammering. They demanded that we remove your name from the list immediately. She asked me to nullify your invitation. She was very upset, mentioned some family conflict. Specifically, she brought up your trip to London and how you missed Chloe's engagement party. Said Chloe was in tears and that your behavior was unacceptable. Every word stabbed like a small shard of ice. But after 15 years in big business, I had learned to keep a straight face. My voice was as hard as steel, understood. But that's not all, Jennifer added hastily, lowering her voice to a whisper. They very insistently asked if the anonymous $40,000 deposit would still stand. Your mother, Mrs. Morgan, made it clear that those funds had already been allocated to other wedding needs. That's when I went silent. I was uninvited, but my money wasn't. I looked out the panoramic window. Chicago spread out beneath me, and a good third of those shining skyscrapers belonged to me, directly or indirectly, through Morgan Empire. And my family, to them, Melissa, was still too career-focused, the one who would never settle down. They had no idea that their unlucky daughter, whom they pitted at family dinners, had quietly built this empire. Ms. Morgan? Are you still on the line? Jennifer's voice brought me back. Yes, I'm here. My voice was cold and calm as ice. Jennifer, I want you to cancel the entire event. Completely. A deafening silence fell on the other end. Excuse me? Cancel the Morgan Anderson wedding. Annul the venue booking. Cancel the catering, the florists, the musicians. Every last napkin. Now, real panic was audible in Jennifer's voice. Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand. You are not the client on this contract. You can't unilaterally. Jennifer, I interrupted her, but my tone was soft, almost motherly. What is the name of the company you work for? Elegant Visions Wedding Planning. That's right. And who owns Elegant Visions, Jennifer? I heard her frantic typing. It's a subsidiary of Morgan Venues LLC. And who owns Morgan Venues LLC? The pause became almost unbearable. Morgan Empire Holdings. Correct. And I am Melissa Morgan, founder and CEO of Morgan Empire Holdings. So, Jennifer, trust me. I can cancel this wedding. I stood up and walked to the window, looking at my reflection in the glass. And let's make it a clean sweep. Cancel their rehearsal dinner reservation at the Azure Room at the Grand Phoenix Hotel. That's mine too. And the contract with Summit Catering. Also mine. The luxury floral arrangements from Bloom and Bramble? Mine. And yes, the photographers from Evergreen Photoworks. They work for me too. Cancel it all. Ms. Morgan. Jennifer was clearly stammering on the other end, her professional composure evaporated. I had no idea Elegant Visions was. That's not all, Jennifer, I cut her off, my voice as flat as a frozen lake. Chloe's bachelorette party booking at the Skyline Reserve Club next weekend? That's my venue too. Oh, and that order for a fleet of limousines from Windy City Premier Limo? That's another one of my subsidiaries. I could hear her short, panicked breathing on the other end. But, Ms. Morgan, I beg you, the wedding is only 3 weeks away. We've sent invitations to 200 guests. All the deposits. Cancel it, my voice didn't waver. Refund all deposits that guests made for their room bookings at the Grand Phoenix. Then immediately issue a full invoice for penalties and event disruption to the Morgan and Anderson families. You can deduct my initial anonymous $40,000 contribution from it. I'll keep it as payment for my time and emotional distress. Ms. Morgan, this is a catastrophe, Jennifer whispered. They physically won't be able to find a new venue and vendors in such a short time. You will completely destroy their wedding. As you said, Jennifer, I pressed the end call button. I'm no longer a guest. I leaned back in my leather chair and looked out at the city that didn't know I ran it. I'm 35, and my family still sees me as the girl who went off the rails. They never forgave me for dropping out of Harvard Business School one semester before graduation to found what they mockingly called my little event company. They had no idea that this little business, which I vaguely mentioned over Thanksgiving dinner, had grown into Morgan Empire Holdings, one of the largest hospitality empires in the Midwest. My phone vibrated on the desk. A text from my mother, Catherine Morgan. Melissa, your decision to ignore your own sister's engagement party for another deal was the last straw. You have always put your work before family, and Chloe doesn't deserve this. We feel your presence at the wedding would be inappropriate and only upset her more. We've all discussed it and think it's best if you don't come to the wedding. We will, of course, keep the money you anonymously contributed to the planning, as it has already been fully spent. A cold smile touched my lips. I quickly typed a reply. Noted. Good luck with the party. What my family didn't know was that I had been building my empire in plain sight. It all started the day I walked out of Harvard Business School, just one semester shy of graduating. Not because I couldn't handle the work, but because I saw a huge, unoccupied niche in the Chicago luxury events market. While my family saw it as a shameful defeat and a crushing of all their hopes, I was, in essence, turning down a guaranteed prestigious job on Wall Street to bet absolutely everything on my own vision. My first company, Morgan Events, was born in my tiny studio apartment in Lincoln Park. I personally planned corporate events and small weddings, working 18-hour days. I often fell asleep curled up on the couch in my makeshift office, buried under fabric swatches and menus. My family's reaction was predictable and disparaging. Melissa is just going through another phase. She'll get tired of playing soon and come back to us asking for money for a real job. Within 2 years, having saved up seed money, I bought my first property, a small, nearly bankrupt banquet hall in the trendy West Loop neighborhood. My family still thought I was just playing businesswoman. All their attention, all their pride, was focused on my sister Chloe, who was following the correct and understandable path, finishing art college to find herself a decent husband. By year 5, I owned 6 exclusive venues in 3 different states. Thus, Morgan Empire Holdings was born. I realized I needed to control everything and began to aggressively acquire related businesses, the city's best catering services, designer floral studios, in-demand photo agencies, limousine services. I methodically built a vertically integrated empire where every aspect of the luxury event industry belonged to me. And my family? They remained blissfully ignorant. At rare family dinners, they would condescendingly ask, "So, how's your, little business, Melissa? Still doing flowers?" And they would immediately change the subject to Chloe's brilliant prospects and her engagement to Michael. When I acquired my first flagship hotel, the luxurious Grand Phoenix in the heart of Chicago, the very one where they planned to hold the rehearsal dinner, I casually mentioned it at Christmas as a small expansion into hospitality. They nodded politely and immediately changed the subject to discuss the weather. The real explosive growth of my empire came in the 7th year. While the rest of the country was going through an economic downturn and other companies were desperately trying to stay afloat, I saw a unique opportunity in the chaos. I started buying up distressed hotel chains and restaurant groups for pennies on the dollar. The luxury Grand Phoenix Hotel, the entire Summit Catering chain, the exclusive Skyline Reserve Club, these were all companies whose names my family had heard and perhaps even admired. They could never have imagined that their unpromising daughter owned them all. The phone rang exactly 30 minutes after my call with Jennifer. I hadn't even finished my morning coffee. It was my father, Robert. "Melissa," his voice was tense and confused, like a man who had just discovered his world had turned upside down. "Some woman just called me in a total panic. She said the venue for Chloe's wedding is cancelled. This must be some ridiculous mistake." "No mistake, Dad," I replied, calmly looking at the Chicago skyline. "What do you mean, no mistake? This is absurd. We have a signed contract." "Correct. You have a contract with Elegant Visions," I confirmed. "Which is a subsidiary of Morgan Venues LLC. Which, in turn, is owned by Morgan Empire Holdings. And that holding company, Dad, is entirely owned by me." A deafening silence fell on the line. I could only hear his ragged breathing. "Melissa, what the hell are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you and Mom decided to revoke my invitation to my own sister's wedding. And in doing so, you seriously asked to keep the $40,000 that I paid for it all. So I canceled everything else." His voice trembled. You paid for the wedding?" "I paid for all of it. The rental of the Grand Phoenix. The Summit Catering. The hotel bookings for the guests. The flowers from Bloom and Bramble. The evergreen photographers. The rehearsal dinner. The bachelorette party at Skyline Reserve. The Windy City premiere limousines." I paused, letting the scale of it sink in. "Every single aspect of this event, every cent, runs through a company I own. So congratulations, Dad. You just kicked the only person paying for this entire party out of the wedding." Another long, heavy silence hung on the line. "Melissa," my father finally said, "I think there's been some misunderstanding here." "No misunderstanding, Dad. You made it perfectly clear that I'm not welcome at your family events. Therefore, my companies are, in turn, not welcome to provide services for your family events." "Companies?" His voice held genuine bewilderment. "Melissa, what companies? You just plan weddings, don't you?" I almost laughed out loud. 15 years. After 15 years, he still thought I arranged chairs and tasted cakes. "Dad, I own Morgan Empire Holdings. We control over 50 properties across the Midwest. 30 exclusive venues, 15 luxury hotels, several restaurant chains, and every related service you can think of. Our revenue last year was $1.4 billion. That's impossible." "You're lying. Check our corporate website. Check the Chicago Business Registry. You can even look at last year's Fortune 500 list." I heard a muffled, frightened whisper in the background. My mother, Catherine, had obviously grabbed the phone or put it on speaker. "Melissa," Mom's voice was trembling so much it sounded like she was about to cry. We had no idea. You never told us you were this successful." I tried," I replied coldly. "Every single Thanksgiving for the past 15 years, I tried to tell you what I was building. Remember when I mentioned buying the Grand Phoenix Hotel? You said you were glad I found such a nice hobby. When I told you I was expanding the hotel business into 3 states, you asked me when I was going to settle down and finally find a real job. But you dropped out of Harvard to build this," she stammered. "I saw an opportunity and I took it. While you were pouring all your energy into pushing Chloe down the right path at art college, I was busy building an empire that makes millions of dollars a week. My father cleared his throat again, his tone instantly shifting from arrogant to fawning. Melissa, listen, surely we can work something out? Chloe's wedding is no longer my concern, Dad. You annulled my invitation, remember? You made it clear my presence would somehow taint your perfect family celebration. But we didn't know. He started. You didn't know because you never bothered to listen. You saw a girl who dropped out of Harvard and instantly labeled me a failure. You never bothered to look deeper. My phone vibrated with another incoming call. It was Jennifer again. Dad, I have to go. Melissa, wait. I switched to the other line. Jennifer, go ahead. Ms. Morgan, my phone is blowing up. Her voice was on the verge of hysteria. I've been getting calls all morning. Your sister, your parents, even Michael's family, the Andersons. They're all begging to rebook. And, ma'am, in 3 weeks, it's just not possible. Every decent venue in Chicago and the suburbs is booked solid. All the catering services are already handling other events. There are simply no alternatives. What about the Willow Estate? I asked casually. That, ma'am, that's one of your venues too. The smallest one. And yes, it's already booked for that weekend, we have a corporate event. Well, then they'll have to figure something else out. Ms. Morgan, your mother called me in tears. She said 200 people are invited, families have already bought tickets and are flying in from all over the country. She's begging for any solution. Absolutely anything. I thought for a moment, looking at my perfect manicure. Any solution? Yes, ma'am. Whatever it takes, those were her exact words. All right. Then here's what we'll do. I'll have that corporate event moved. They can have the wedding at the Willow Estate. But there are conditions. The reception hall's capacity there is 80 people max, not one more. They'll have to cut their guest list immediately. They will get the bronze basic catering package only. Only local, seasonal flowers. And only our staff photographer, no options. The total cost for the new package is $200,000. Payment up front. By 5 p.m. today. Ms. Morgan, Jennifer's voice was full of shock. But that's 5 times what they were paying originally. And they'll have half the space and basic service. That's my offer, Jennifer. They wanted to exclude me from their celebration but were happy to keep my money. Now they have a chance to include me in the decision-making process by paying the real market price for the rush. If they don't like it, I added, glancing at the clock, they can always get married at City Hall. They have until 5 p.m. I hung up and went back to analyzing my reports. Exactly 3 hours later, as I was getting ready for my next meeting, my personal phone rang again. This time, it was Chloe. Melissa, what the hell is going on? Her voice was breaking into a scream. You're getting married. Congratulations, I replied, my tone icy. Don't you dare play these games with me. Mom is sobbing uncontrollably. Dad called 6 different catering companies, and every single one of them told him you own their business. What kind of sick joke is this? It's not a joke, Chloe. It's business. Business? Melissa, this is my wedding. Your wedding, which I was secretly funding. Your wedding, which I was pointedly uninvited from. Your wedding, which our entire loving family decided I wasn't worthy of attending. We thought it would be better. You thought it would be better to kick your own sister out of the most important day of your life, but quietly pocket the $40,000 I contributed? Is that what family values are called now? Chloe was silent for a moment. We didn't know that money was from you. Mom came to me 6 months ago, I stated flatly. She said you and Michael were having serious budget problems, and his family couldn't contribute their share. I wrote a check for $40,000 that same day. Anonymously. To save you the humiliation. Melissa. I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. Just like you never asked about my business, my life, or anything else that didn't involve you. You, Mom, and Dad just decided I was the family failure, the spinster with a little hobby, and moved on. That's not true, she cried. Chloe, when was the last time you asked me a genuine question about my life? Not who am I dating, but what matters to me. When was the last time any of you showed any real interest in what I do? Silence again on the line. I'll offer you a deal, Chloe, I continued, my voice softening, but only slightly. You can have your wedding at one of my best venues. But I want 3 things. First, an official, sincere apology from the entire family. Second, an acknowledgement that you were all wrong about me. And third, my invitation must be reinstated. Not out of politeness or because I have you backed into a corner. But because you actually want me to be there. Melissa, of course we want you there. She blurted out, too quickly. Do you want me? Or do you want my money and my venues? That's not fair, she shrieked. Not fair? My voice turned to ice again. You decided to cut your own sister out of your life, but secretly keep her financial contribution to your wedding. Chloe, please explain to me what's fair about that. She was breathing heavily into the phone. What happens if we don't agree to your terms? Then you and Michael will have exactly 3 weeks to figure out how to throw a wedding for 200 people in Chicago with 0 connections in the industry. Good luck with that. And if we agree? Then you will get married at the most beautiful venue in this city, with the best service in the world. And your older sister will be standing right beside you, as family should. I need to talk to Michael. And my parents. Yes, Chloe, I said, hanging up. Of course, you do. That same evening, my phone rang again. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I answered. Melissa? This is Michael. Chloe's fiancé. His voice was quiet and careful. I think we really need to talk. Congratulations on the engagement, Michael. Thanks. Listen, Melissa, I swear, I had no idea about any of this. Chloe never told me you were helping with the costs. And I had no idea about all these companies. Most people don't. I've spent the last few hours online. Morgan Empire Holdings. Melissa, it's a giant. You own half the hotels Chloe and I were afraid to even look at because we thought we could never afford them. I've had a good 15 years. Melissa, I need to apologize. We all do. I was there when your parents and Chloe when they decided to revoke your invitation. I should have said something. I didn't, and I'm ashamed of that. He paused, and I could hear the emotion in his voice. Melissa, I would be honored to have you at our wedding. Not because of your business or your money, but because you're Chloe's sister and you obviously care about this family more than anyone else realized. What does Chloe say? Chloe is processing. She's realizing her older sister isn't who she thought she was. It's a lot of information to take in. And my parents? They're terrified. They've spent years treating you like the family disappointment. And now they're finding out you're probably the most successful person in the room at any gathering. Success isn't just about money. No, but respect should be about acknowledging when someone has earned it. And you've clearly earned it for a long time. The next day, Jennifer from Elegant Visions called with an update. Ms. Morgan, your family has accepted your terms. They paid the deposit for the package at the Willow Estate and have officially requested your invitation be reinstated. They agreed to all the conditions? Yes. Your father separately asked me to pass on that the family would like to meet with you before the wedding to offer a formal apology. And your sister wants to know if you would agree to be her maid of honor. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the city skyline again. 15 years I had been building this empire. From the age of 20, step by step, I had climbed to the top while my family saw only failure. All those years I had tried to share my success, while they heard only excuses. All those years I had been proving my worth, while they waited for me to grow up. Jennifer. Yes, Ms. Morgan? Tell them the meeting is on. Schedule it for this Saturday in the Azure Room at the Grand Phoenix Hotel. It's my private dining room. And Jennifer. Yes? Make sure the catering is perfect. The meeting was set for 2 p.m. on Saturday. I arrived early and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city harbor. This hotel had been my biggest acquisition, a failing property I had turned into the region's premier destination. The private dining room alone was worth more than most people's homes. My family arrived together, Mom, Dad, Chloe, and Michael. They looked around the room with visible astonishment. Crystal chandeliers, hand-carved furniture, a view that stretched for miles across the water. Melissa, Dad said, formally extending his hand. Thank you for meeting us. Sit down. They settled around the mahogany table as waiters brought in a lunch prepared by the same kitchen that served governors and celebrities. This place is incredible, Mom said quietly. I had no idea you owned it. I mentioned buying this hotel 3 years ago. You said I was expanding my business. So it was. It was an expansion. Dad cleared his throat. Melissa, we owe you an apology. A serious apology. We have underestimated you, badly. For years, we saw what we expected to see, instead of what was really happening. Chloe leaned forward. Melissa, I am so sorry. I'm sorry for diminishing your accomplishments, for thinking you were irresponsible. And I'm sorry I got so horribly offended that you weren't at the engagement party. I thought you just chose your career over me, not understanding that your trip to London was for such massive work. And I'm sorry for letting the family cancel your invitation to my wedding. Why did you think I was irresponsible? Because you gave up a normal career. Because you never had a traditional job. Because you never bragged about your success. Would bragging have helped? No. But maybe if you had been more direct about what you were building. I smiled slightly. Chloe, I told you 3 years ago that I acquired a hotel chain. You said, that's nice, and changed the subject to your latest promotion at the office. I didn't realize you meant you owned them. What did you think I meant? She had no answer. Michael spoke up. Melissa, we'd like to start over. All of us. We want to know about your life, your business, your plans. We want to be a real family. And if I hadn't turned out to be rich, what then? Dad answered honestly. Then we probably would have continued to underestimate you. That's what makes this so shameful. At least you're honest. Mom had tears in her eyes. Melissa, I am so proud of you. I'm proud of what you've built. But most of all, I'm proud that you still wanted to help with the wedding, even after how we treated you. You're my family. That matters to me, even when it seems like it doesn't matter to you. Chloe stood up and walked around the table. Melissa, I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted to ask again. Will you be my maid of honor? I looked at my little sister, the golden child who had followed every family expectation, who had never taken a risk or built something from scratch. For the first time, I saw insecurity in her eyes. She was finally seeing me clearly. Chloe, I would be honored. The wedding took place 3 weeks later. After our reconciliation, I decided to give them a real gift. I moved the celebration from the Willow Estate, which they had booked to meet my terms but was too small for their guest list, to my largest and most luxurious restaurant. It was my flagship venue, and it was beyond impressive. With coastal views and gardens that had been featured in architectural magazines, the family that once laughed at my party planning business watched in awe as my staff executed a flawless event. During my speech, as maid of honor, I looked out at the 200 guests, many of whom had been hearing whispers of my business empire throughout the evening. When Chloe and I were kids, I began, she always looked up to me. Somewhere along the way, that changed. She started to see me as the sister who took the wrong path, who gave up on a normal career. I paused, meeting my family's eyes. What Chloe didn't realize was that I never gave up on success. I just defined it differently. Success isn't about meeting other people's expectations. It's about building something meaningful and being able to share it with the people you love. I raised my glass to Chloe and Michael. May you build something beautiful together. And may you always remember that the best achievements are the ones you share with family. Later, as the evening wound down, Dad approached me on the terrace. Melissa, I have a question. Of course. Why didn't you just tell us? Why did you let us think you were barely scraping by all these years? I considered it carefully. Dad, I tried to tell you. But more than that, I wanted you to be proud of me for who I was, not what I owned. I wanted you to see that my career choice was valid, that building something from nothing had value. And we failed that test. You did. But you passed the test that mattered more. What test? Tonight. When you had the choice between pride and family, you chose family. When you realized you were wrong, you admitted it. That's worth more than years of validation. Dad approached me on the terrace, his gaze softer than I had seen it in years. He put his hand on my shoulder. I'm proud of you, Melissa. His voice was uncharacteristically thick with emotion. And not because of your hotels, but because of your character. You had every right to cut us out of your life, and instead you saved your sister's wedding. Family is family, Dad. Even when they forget what that means. Later, in the quiet of my car, I watched the restaurant's lights recede. 15 years. My entire adult life, since I was 20, had gone into building this empire while my family saw it as just a hobby. The party planner who had just hosted the wedding of the year. The family disappointment who had turned out to be their pillar. The phone on the seat beside me lit up dimly. A text from Chloe, thank you for everything. I'm sorry it took me so long to see who you really are. I'm so lucky you're my sister. I smiled, leaning my head back against the headrest. Welcome to the family business, I typed back. In the morning, my phone was practically exploding. 20 missed calls, 37 messages. But for the first time in my life, it wasn't a chaos of reproaches or requests. It was admiring links to society page articles, photos, and, most importantly, messages from my parents, Chloe, and Michael. All asking the same thing, when can we have dinner again? A real dinner. A family one. Sitting in my office on Monday, looking out at the skyline I had helped shape, I realized, true success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about having enough strength to keep loving them even when they are wrong. And, if you're lucky, waiting long enough for them to see it. And they did see it. The next month changed everything. It was no longer just an act of forgiveness, it was a beginning. We didn't run into each other at awkward holidays anymore. We started meeting. There were Sunday family dinners at my parents' house, where no one walked on eggshells anymore, and my success wasn't a taboo subject but a source of genuine pride. There were spontaneous walks in the park on Saturdays, with dogs and coffee, where we laughed at silly things instead of discussing my shortcomings. Chloe would call me just to chat about a dress she saw, not to lecture me. We became a family. The family I, as it turned out, had been building all along.